Hey guys, Metal Jesus here. Now recently on social media I asked the question, what is your largest game collection? And I got a ton of awesome responses to this. But also people thought this would make a good subject for a video. So in this video I'm going to share with you my largest game collections as well as my smallest. And I think you're going to be surprised by my smallest game collection because, well, you can count them on just one hand. Let's take a look. So the first collection I want to talk about is the awesome Sony PlayStation Portable, the PSP. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I am absolutely in love with this game collection, and I have a little over 260 games for it. Now, the thing I like about the PSP is that there is just a huge variety of games released for it. It's funny because I think people look back on the PSP as perhaps a failure, especially when compared to Nintendo's more popular handhelds. But in reality, actually, there are just a ton of great games for it, and it's a joy to collect for. And the first thing I would say about the PSP is that it is just an amazing system if you love role-playing games. And what I'm showing you here is just simply a fraction of the RPGs that were released on the PSP. It's quite impressive. And again, what struck me at the time when the PSP came out is that it was really like almost having a miniaturized PlayStation 2 in your hands, and you saw that reflected in the types of games that were released for it. You had racing games, sports games, platformers, puzzle games, first-person shooters, third-person shooters. It just goes on and on and on, and it's an absolute joy to collect for. My next largest collection is the original Xbox. You see it here, and the number of games I have actually is almost exactly tied with the PSP. I have just barely over 260 of them. And again, like the PSP, I think most gamers look back on the original Xbox as a failure, especially when compared, obviously, to the PlayStation 2. But in many regards, it has an awesome library that I still love collecting for even today. And thankfully, I started collecting for the original Xbox long before it became popular, because some of these games I'm showing you right here can be crazy expensive today. I know for me, my love affair with BioWare as well as Obsidian started on the original Xbox, especially with the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic series. And then also, I actually think that Jade Empire is a fantastic RPG. I would love to see BioWare do a sequel to it. And during this period, you got a ton of really excellent James Bond games. I am a huge James Bond fan, and all of these right here are some of my favorites. Now, they're not exclusive to the Xbox, but I feel the Xbox version is the best version to get these on. They just have sometimes better resolutions, better frame rates, things like that. But really, the Xbox was known for having amazing first-person shooters. That generation, it pretty much played them the best, and these are some of my favorites right here. I still go back and play a lot of these when I'm in the mood. As well as some awesome racing games. I know I talk about these all the time, but again, for that generation, the original Xbox was the most powerful and it could run these the best. So if I'm in the mood for these, I definitely play them on the original Xbox. The next game collection I want to mention is the mighty PlayStation 2. And I currently have a little over 300 games for it. And the reason is quite simple. It's one of my all-time favorite game consoles ever. Now, I've mentioned it before, but pretty much during the 1990s, I was a PC gamer through and through. Played a couple consoles here and there, but really it was the PlayStation 2 that sucked me back into consoles, and in a big way. I just think at the time, so many game developers were able to be creative and really take chances with their games on the PlayStation 2. There is a little of everything if you're a fan of games on this. I mean, the variety never ends, and it's such a joy to collect for and just discover something new. And like the PSP, there was no shortage of awesome, groundbreaking role-playing games on the PlayStation 2. Again, it's an amazing system for pretty much every genre. It's also one of the few systems that really hasn't stopped growing over time. It just seems like I'm always discovering something new that I never knew about, whether it was released in North America or PAL or Japan territories. It's an amazing game system, and it just goes on forever. And now we get to the biggest game collection, and it's gonna be no surprise to many of you, it is my big box PC collection. Now, I'd love to be able to tell you exactly how many of these I have, but I kind of lost count after a couple thousand of them. And the challenge really is that when I say big box PC, I mean personal computers. And so this collection is MS-DOS, it's Commodore 64, Amiga, Atari ST, it's a little of everything. And there's no one cataloging app that works with all of these. And so it's a bit of a challenge. And you're only seeing part of this collection, because if I show you the closet here, you can see that there's another 20 plus boxes in there that I haven't yet sorted through. And it's funny because when people come over to my house and look at the game collection, this is the part that really blows them away, because you don't typically see this many big box PC games out in people's collections. It's kind of unique. But it's such a joy to collect for, especially because there's not a lot of competition when I go to expos or retro gaming stores. Most game collectors are looking for console stuff, so it's really cool to be able to go in there and hopefully find some little gems. So those are my largest game collections, but let's take a look at my smallest ones. One of my smallest game collections is really not going to be a surprise to many of you. That, of course, is the Virtual Boy. So for the Virtual Boy, I have a whopping 8 games for this system, and you see them here. And that's out of a possible 22 retail releases for it. So 22 games came out for the Virtual Boy. There's not a lot to choose from. Now you might be saying to yourself, hey, wait a second, I see 9 games there. Well, that's because for Mario Tennis, I have the North American release as well as the Japanese, so I'm just counting them as one. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some collectible games on it, and you see one of them here, that is Jack Brothers, but I'm showing you the Japanese version of it, and the reason for that is quite simple, because the North American release is crazy expensive, and the Japanese version walked into Pink Gorilla one day, and Kelsey sold me this one for way cheaper. So keep that in mind if you're collecting for the Virtual Boy, that often you can get the Japanese version for much, much less. My next smallest game collection would be for the Vectrex. The Vectrex is a very sought after and frankly beloved game console that just didn't sell very well in North America. Despite this being a pretty cool console, it just came out during the video game crash of the 1980s, and so only 29 games were officially released for this, and I have 5 of them here. Now you notice that all of these are cartridge only, so keep in mind if you're going to be collecting for the Vectrex, you're going to pay even more if you want to get them complete. And most people will, because there is actually a color overlay that you put on the screen, something that kind of helps the gameplay out, but it's not necessary. And then tied for the Vectrex as my smallest game collection, you see it here, is the Magnavox Odyssey 2. So all told, there were 47 games released for the Odyssey, and I have 5 of them here. I remember when I was in junior high, my best friend and neighbor had one of these, and I would go over and play it occasionally. See, I had an Atari 2600 and he had the Odyssey 2. So it's kind of cool to sort of compare the two. And yeah, the Odyssey 2 was a generation newer, but it wasn't very impressive, at least not to me. And so there's never really been an interest from me to try to collect for it or get more of these games, even though I do think the packaging looks pretty cool. It definitely looks kind of disco and kind of groovy. So yeah, those are my largest and smallest game collections. And I would love to know down in the comments, what are your largest and smallest game collections? Because I know this is going to vary completely all over the map. You know, it all depends on where you grew up and what you're passionate about, maybe what you were introduced to as a kid. I'd love to know down in the comments below. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.